Okay.
Zoom to process it, and then re-download it. But if it's recorded in the cloud, then it's there and you don't have to worry about keeping it somewhere locally. So either way is fine. It's just what you can fit best into your workflow. So we were just talking about the exam and talking about how you'll upload the exam to Gradescope. You'll download the PDF from Canvas, and you can upload the exam to Gradescope. It doesn't matter how you edit the PDF or what you do, as long as you get us a PDF that's readable, that has the answers the right places on the page, because when we grade it in Gradescope, it will divide up the pages based on the spaces where the answers are supposed to be written. So it's it's not hard, but you can do it. You can edit the exam in with a tablet. Annotate it with a tablet. Annotate it with software on your computer, like Acrobat or something like that. Or you can print it out, fill it in by hand, and then scan it with a scanner or with your phone. They're good apps for doing this for both Android and iOS. So any of those are acceptable. We want to be maximally flexible. If none of those will work for you, let us know and I can mail it to you. Give me your address and I'll mail it to you. But it's started and you can view it now. And it is due 11:59 on October 26th. Did I say 29th in the announcement? No, 26th. That's good. Yeah, it's due 11:59 on the 26th.
11:59 p.m.
Yes, 11:59 p.m.
Okay.
We do that to avoid saying midnight Tuesday, because then it's confusing. People don't know whether midnight Tuesday is which day it is sometimes. So if you say 11:59 p.m. Monday, then you know it's Monday night instead of Tuesday night. We do not have an assignment due on Wednesday. The assignment will be due next week. It will be an easy assignment. I'm going to pare it down a little bit, and it should be fairly simple to do, but it will be due Wednesday, and I will get it out to you. Yeah, the Canvas is wrong. I will get the assignment out to you by Wednesday, but probably you won't have time to think about it until we can probably do the assignment next Friday. But, well, yeah, that would probably work. We don't want to throw the schedule off too much because I was not expecting this take-home final, so it interferes with the general flow of the schedule. So, but we'll try to work around it. Any questions? Who here? Raise your hand if you've had a chance to look at the exam already, to open it up at least. Okay, a couple of you. A few. So take a look. If you have any questions, be sure to let me know, and I will do my best to answer them. Remember that the test is open book open Note, open Video, open Google, but not open Classmate. So you should not, you may not consult with any members of this class or any members of any people at all who've taken this course previously, or in fact, with any humans regarding the content of this test, except for Lori and I. You can ask us questions, but you can, so you can't, you can look at what is already there on the internet, which may be helpful to understand some terms and refresh your memory about things. I think that the lecture notes and the videos are going to be more useful to you in general. And you can do any of that. You just can't, and your notes are going to be useful to you, but you can't ask people. And we're relying on your honesty and your integrity to follow that directive. Are there any questions about that?
I just skimmed through the exam and I see some questions regarding Lexi. We
Yes,
haven't solved yet the homework, right?
right,
Which is with respect to that. I guess maybe some questions will come out from it because I haven't done any exercise on that before.
right. We haven't, we did in the video. Lexi is actually quite easy.
Okay.
And the hard thing is getting the getting the morphology right. If you understand the pattern, then the Lexi itself is not very complicated. But I would be happy to talk to you about Lexi and give you a sample problem, like prepare the homework with some information to help you learn how to do Lexi.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions?
There are two hands up. Is
Is that from before? Sal and
okay? No, there's one. Okay,
no.
one hands up now.
Okay, if there are no more questions right now, Piazza private message, no public messages. Private message me if you have questions about the exam, and I'll do my best to answer them. Lori can also answer questions about the morphology and possibly the phonology part, though probably not the phonetics part. But we will do our best to answer your questions.
Yeah, if I were answering questions, I would have to check with you about what not to give away.
Okay.
I will be careful not to give away the answer. And I will also be careful not to tell you anything wrong.
So if Lori had designed this test, then all of the problems would be very clever. They would have very clever punchlines. And since I designed it, then it's sort of brute force. But hopefully you'll still have an enjoyable time as to the extent that that's possible taking the exam, showing us what you know, and learning a few things additionally while you're at it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, should I just go and start the next part of the lecture?
I think so.
Okay, so we're switching gears. No, that's not what I wanted to do. Oh, wait, am I sharing my screen? We are switching gears to a new topic, which is morphosyntax. And the first thing I'm going to do today is really define morphosyntax. So I'm going to give a definition of morphosyntactic strategies and something called interlinear glosses. But I'm really going to pick apart the definition of morphosyntax. Okay, so the part that's in black, define morphosyntax, review what is a construction, and I think review what is grammaticalization. But David, have we talked about grammaticalization?
We did talk about grammaticalization in one of the video lessons, but very briefly. So this is an important topic, which I think they should hear about again.
Okay, good. So that's what we're going to do. Pick apart a definition. So I made this definition of morphosyntax based on books by Tom Paine and Bill Croft. You can see the references at the bottom of the slide. So morphosyntax is about meanings that are grammaticalized in morphology and syntax. So you see the word meanings is in green, and morphology and syntax are in orangey brown. And so meanings is meaning, and morphology and syntax are form. So morphosyntax is about form and meaning. Well, constructions are pairs of forms and meaning. So morphosyntax is about constructions. And then there's this blue word, grammaticalized. It's about meanings that have been grammaticalized in morphology and syntax. So we're going to go over all of that. Okay, so we're reviewing what is a construction and adding one new piece of terminology, which is a construction element. Oh, so by the way, I don't know how to see the chat while screen sharing, and I think David knew how to do that on a Mac, but I'm on a PC. Does anyone know how I can see the chat while screen sharing?
I think if there should be a thing that says something like you're sharing your screen, or for me it says you're viewing Lori Levin's screen, but it should say something different for you. So if you move your mouse near that or over that, then the kind of menu bar should appear that has the chat as one of the icons, or else off in a menu at the right.
Oh, okay, yeah, gotcha. Okay, can someone try sending a chat? I don't see it. Has anyone sent? David, can you send a chat?
Yes, lots of people have sent chats.
Whoops. I don't see them. Okay, so for now, how about if, David, if you interrupt and read the chats?
Okay, I'll monitor the chat.
And then I'll practice for next time. Okay, so a new piece of terminology with construction is a construction element. And so this slide shows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 constructions. And in each construction, I've made the construction elements different colors. So the first construction has the meaning that the verb is in the future. And the form of the construction is the word gonna, and then followed by an infinitive verb. And an example is gonna read. And that means that the reading will be in the future. So the two construction elements are gonna and read. And I put them in different colors. And if you can't see colors, ask for clarification. I know some people can't see colors. Oh, and I missed a color in the next one. So another construction that also means future is will plus an infinitive verb, as in will read. I think we talked about the incongruity construction. Incongruity means these two things don't go together. So what is this fly doing in my soup? Flies don't belong with soup. Or what is she doing going to a movie when she should be writing her thesis? So going to a movie doesn't belong with writing a thesis. So this is a construction that expresses incongruity. And the construction elements is what is, it could also be what are they doing going to a movie? So it really should say what be, be, where be represents is and are. What is X doing Y-ing? And then last time we talked about or in some previous lecture, David talked about the correlation construction, where, say, reading more correlates with knowing more. So the construction elements are the more, and then there's the X and Y. I read and I know, and I read more correlates with I know more. And then another version of the construction at the bottom of the screen, the Xer, the Yer. So the sooner the better. Sorry, I messed up the color coding on there. Okay, so now a couple of other things I want to talk about these constructions. I want to talk about productivity and semantic compositionality. So we're going to go back to the examples on the previous slide, and I'll be looking for some class participation on to discuss the productivity and semantic compositionality of the constructions. So productivity, if a construction is productive, it means that you can substitute in for those construction elements. You can substitute in almost any word or phrase of the right type. So if it says infinitive verb, almost any infinitive verb goes there. And that's what makes it productive. Compositional means that the meaning of the whole is predictable from the meaning of the parts. So idioms are not semantically compositional. So if you look at your goose is cooked, you can't predict that that means you're in trouble. And you can't predict that the cat is out of the bag means that a secret has been told, or that spilling the beans also means that secrets have been told. It's not very compositional semantically. But things like the student yawned are compositional semantically. You know what yawn means, and you know what student means, and you know what the student yawned means. So that is semantically compositional. So now let's look at the constructions again, and let's look at what parts of them are productive and what parts of them are compositional. So let's see, I'm looking for some class participation. Let's say for gonna read, gonna infinitive verb and will infinitive verb. How about the infinitive verb? Is that productive? I think I said the answer a minute ago.
Yes, Yuan Gao says, yes, Sadesh says, yes, Zach says, Jenny says mostly.
Do you know some infinitive verbs that can't go there? I'm not sure that I do, but you know what? Actually, you know what can't go there is
Jenny,
I know that.
Jenny amends what she said to "hoops." I mean, yes.
Okay. Other modal verbs can't go there, but it's a little bit complicated. You could argue that modal verbs aren't finite, so you can't say will, could, go, but you could say that could is not an infinitive. Okay. Now notice that the green part of the construction, the gonna and the will, that part is not productive. So gonna means future, will means future. There's another one in some dialects of English, finna, fixing to, I'm fixing to go. Maybe something like about to, I'm about to go, I'm just about to go, could mean a near future. But right, that part is not very productive. That's the fixed part. But the infinitive verb part is very productive. Once you have the future word, gonna, will, fixing to, or finna, about to, then the infinitive verb part is very productive. Now, what about the meaning? That when you put this together, it means that the verb is in the future. I think there are two ways of looking at this. Has anyone ever in a linguistics class maybe heard about arbitrariness of signs? Signs are pairs of form and meaning. And a property of human language is that pairing of form and meaning is somewhat arbitrary. So to some extent, the fact that these two constructions mean future is a bit arbitrary. And in fact, we're going to talk in a minute about grammaticalization, and we'll see that going to really used to mean that you were going somewhere, and will really meant that you wanted to do something, and their meaning changed. So the fact that they mean future is a bit arbitrary, but we would say that these constructions are compositional in the sense that once you know that they mean future, once you know that gonna and will are future, then you know that gonna read or will read means that the reading will happen in the future. Okay, let's look at the incongruity and correlation constructions. Does anyone want to say anything about productivity and compositionality of these constructions? What do you think about productivity? Let's take correlation. Try just making more correlation sentences. The more I exercise, the lower my heart rate. Just try making more. See if you think it's what you think about the productivity.
So Arthur says the orange part is extremely productive in incongruity. Oh, sorry, we're doing correlation.
Okay,
My bad.
Brody's okay. Yeah, go ahead. Read the one. Oh, did Arthur not want to? Okay, we can talk about incongruity. So the orange part is productive.
That's what Arthur says.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, that's pretty productive. And how about the blue part of incongruity? The whying? Why or whying? So by the way, there's an entire 40-page journal article about this. It was one of the earliest papers. Oh wait, was the first construction grammar paper on let alone or in
I
this?
think it's let alone.
Okay, yeah, this was one of the in one of the other major papers, a whole 40-page article on this.
So Arthur is asking, he says, I don't understand how in my soup fits in that category.
It's a why, but not whying. So whying is going to a movie, but in my soup is just a location. What else could go with instead of in my soup? Like, what's that fly doing on Mike Pence's head? What else could you put there aside from a location? Let's think about it for a minute. I'm actually not sure. Does it have to be a location like in my soup or a verb phrase like going to a movie? Can it be anything else?
So Abby says upside down.
What's this fly doing upside down? Ah, interesting. So, yeah, and some
Like
adjective,
position, location.
like, yeah, upside down or backwards, but not what's this fly doing blue, right? So maybe a position like upside down,
So,
backwards.
so Zach says, are those just prepositional phrases and verb phrases? Well, and I don't think you can have all prepositional phrases like, right? So if you said, what is this fly doing to my hair? Then that's not the incongruity
Mm-hmm.
construction anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or if you said, what is this fly doing without sympathy?
Right.
That's not the incongruity construction. You're really asking what the fly is doing without sympathy, like it's
Sitting on Mike Pence's hair
with no sympathy
with no sympathy.
to the fact that he's in a internationally televised debate. It was a very unsympathetic fly. Okay, so it looks like
Clearly a communist fly.
yeah. Or some kind of leftist, some other, democratic socialist even.
Yeah, it could be.
So, okay, so it looks like to substitute for in my soup, what we've come up with so far is not just any prepositional phrase or adjective, but it's prepositional phrases or adjectives that are about locations, like in my soup and on Mike Pence's head, or about positions, like upside down or backwards. What is this? What is this? What is this word doing? Like, so suppose I'm trying to write something in insert an Arabic word into a text. And of course, what always happens, say in Microsoft Word, is the Arabic word comes out backwards and the letters are disconnected. So I could say, what is this word doing disconnected? I think that's a legitimate use of the incongruity construction. Like, we just fixed that. What is this word doing disconnected?
So there's some comments or questions from chat. So Tanme says, do we need to have syntactically correct sentences? Like, can we have, what is this fly doing the house? And Arthur says, what is this fly doing buzzing around? I think that works.
Yeah, that's the verb phrase.
ing.
Yeah.
And Arthur also says, also at Tanme, I think they do have to be syntactically correct. If they aren't, the category is too broad.
Yeah. So what is this fly doing the house? Is just doesn't sound like a grammatical English sentence. And what that might show is that in this construction, what is X doing Y or Ying? It's showing that Y can't be a noun. So I don't think we've come up with any good examples where Y is a noun. We've come up,
So
yeah, go ahead.
Kayo says also, what is this student doing nothing?
Okay, well, nothing, right, nothing is a noun. It happens to end in ing, but we should say that ying is a verb with ing. So that is an interesting example that shows that I have not defined the construction very formally, because the word nothing and thing end in ing, but they don't go in this construction because they're nouns. Or if you pause, or did you mean, what is this fly doing? Nothing? Is that what you meant?
Is that what you meant, Kayo? Sorry.
I meant like if a student is supposed to be doing something, then maybe we can say like, what is this student doing nothing? Like, why aren't you working or something?
Oh, what is this student doing nothing?
Yeah.
Instead of, what is this student doing nothing?
I think that's a different construction because it doesn't have the blue part. It's not, it's like, what is, and then this student doing nothing. I don't think it's an instance of this construction. Can somebody help me explain why? So I think that what Kayo is saying is you could have green, what is, orangey, brown, whatever, this student, yellow, brown, doing, and then blue, nothing. What is this
So
student doing? Nothing.
Kayo says, what is this student doing nothing, parentheses, when she should be doing her homework, end parentheses. But I think normally you would say, who is this student doing nothing? And it would not be the incongruity kind of construction like this.
Right. So although Kayo's example matches each colored construction element, when you say it, it doesn't read as an instance of this construction. And now we're pretty sure that the blue part can't be a noun. And the word nothing in Kayo's example is a noun. But that's a good example. What it illustrates is that this this notation I've used for defining constructions is nowhere near exact enough. And in fact, there's a kind of construction grammar called sign-based construction grammar that has really detailed structures for defining constructions very precisely, lots of notation. But is it pretty clear why that example is not an instance of this construction? It would be expressing, so there's two reasons it's not. In this construction, doing doesn't have a literal meaning. So like when you say, what is this fly doing in my soup? The joke answer is the backstroke, or it's swimming. So that's a joke. And the reason that that's a joke is it takes this kind of idiomatic construction and it reinterprets doing literally. What is the fly doing? It's swimming, it's doing the backstroke. So in this construction, doing doesn't actually mean anything. Doing doesn't mean doing in this construction. But what is, who is this student doing nothing, or what is this student doing nothing? The student is doing nothing. And I think that's a more literal use of the word doing. The other reason why it's not an instance of this construction is that the student would be orange and the nothing would be blue. And it would be drawing, if it was interpreted as this construction, it would be drawing an incongruity between student and nothing, which is not terribly incongruous.
Now you know how she thinks of you. No.
It's because it's not comparable at all.
Right.
Um, um, what's incongruous in the example, let's see, who is this student doing nothing? The incongruity is between student and doing nothing, not between student and nothing. So I think that that's why that's not an instance of this construction.
So Zach has a question. He says, so would what is the sand doing in the desert not be versus what is the sand doing in the snow be?
B?
Question mark. Would it be? So
What's the question?
it's comparing what is the sand doing in the desert and what is the sand doing in the snow, and saying, I think that because what is the sand doing in the snow is incongruous, that this could be an instance of the construction, whereas what is the sand doing in the desert would not be
Incongruous, yeah.
incongruous.
Right, so sort of like, yeah, so if you said to me, what is the sand doing in the snow? I would say, oh, that's a good question. Maybe they dumped it there for traction on the ice. But if you said, what is this sand doing in the, what is the sand doing in the desert? I would
Blowing
say,
around.
yeah, I would say, what do you, like, what do you mean? Of course the sand's in the desert. Their sand and desert are congruous, so it would be funny to talk about congruous things in a construction that's about incongruity. So is everybody pretty good with this? The incongruity part is a little bit idiomatic, but once you know that this means incongruity, then it's pretty productive. Okay, any questions about this before we move on? Okay, I'm going to move on. Okay, so we talked about grammaticalization. I put a question mark there because I wasn't sure how much we talked about it. I put a reference to one of the more highly cited papers from 1993. Oh, sorry, it's a book. And the two main people associated with grammaticalization. What?
It's one of the most highly cited books in linguistics, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, Paul Hopper just retired from the English department here. He was at University of Southern California for most of his career. He did the end of his career at Carnegie Mellon and retired, but he has two of the most highly cited things in linguistics, grammaticalization and transitivity. Transitivity he did with Sandra Thompson. So yeah, this is one of the most highly cited books in linguistics. So what is grammaticalization? It's a process where semantically compositional words and phrases change their meaning and become part of grammar. So let's look at the Ghana future tense. So going to do my chores, let's say hundreds of years ago. I actually don't know what point this one flipped. Originally meant that you were going somewhere. You're actually going somewhere to do your chores. But then going to became grammaticalized to mean a future tense. So now when you say that you're going to do your chores, you don't have to be going anywhere. I'm going to do my chores, and you could be doing them right there where you are. You don't have to be going anywhere. So now going to do your chores means you will do your chores. And this is the grammaticalization of the word go from literally meaning to go to being a marker of future is actually pretty common in languages, not just English. And the other thing that's interesting about grammaticalization is that things that are grammaticalized tend to get phonologically reduced. So after going to started to mean future, it got reduced to gonna. You can still say, I'm going to do the chores, but you can also say, I'm going to do the chores. And there are a lot of words in English that were reduced from something else. The indefinite article like a book, was a reduced form of the word one. And that's also true in many, many languages in the world. The word the is a reduced form of this or that. And that's also very common. So questions about this? So a word that loses its literal meaning and becomes part of the grammar. No questions in chat or anything?
I actually have a question regarding grammaticalization. Does it tend to occur through history when people are adopting the language, let's say through conquers, as in Latin America, people trying to adopt Spanish to speak rather than their native languages? Because I see a lot of grammaticalization happening in Mexican Spanish, for instance.
Oh, yeah. What's an exact? So the answer is generally no. It's something that languages are able to do all on their own without contact with other languages. But what examples do you see?
So, for instance, nothing more, right? In Spanish, would be nada más, nada, nothing, más, more. In Mexico, we tend to say nada más, o no más, o no más. And the thing is, it happens that the people that spoke Nahuatl, for instance, the sound of the, like nada, is not natural for them. So they tend to just cut it off because they didn't want to sound funny and made fun of for not being able to pronounce it correctly. That is like a fun fact that I learned. I remember teachers teaching us that, yeah, during primary school or high school.
This
David, do you think they're right, or do you think the softening of D to the and then disappearing, like in like Chile and some places, it goes like the ending ado goes all the way to al? Ado,
yeah,
ro, al.
as a historical linguist, I have to say that this sort of thing just happens. And it's constantly happening, these kinds of phonological reductions. It's just a product of both perception and articulation. So when you're not watching something very closely, like these high frequency items, things like nada más, it occurs a lot, and it's low salience. So you're not really paying attention when you're saying it. So there's a lot of variation. And then people listening think, oh, one of those variants is the intended one, and often it's the reduced variant. So there's this feedback loop with production and perception that tends to favor reduction of things that are in weak positions or in high predictability words. But
So it depends. So grammaticalization would occur on high frequency terms?
yes. So it's most common in high frequency words, or words that are highly predictable, at least. So they're the words that your language model would always get right. So you're not really paying, it doesn't make a lot of difference whether you pronounce them clearly or not. So there's a lot of variation, and then this gets incorporated by the next generation of language learners into the way that the word is pronounced conventionally. But language contact can speed things like this up, because particularly because people, when you're learning a different language or have a second language, often you learn it imperfectly, and so you don't. It sort of accelerates this whole process.
Mhm.
So would you say that a country like the US has a lot of grammaticalization due to the old immigration that occurs in the country and
The
all these adopters through generations?
American English has a few things that are grammaticalized that are not grammaticalized in like British English, but actually it's not that much.
Okay.
It's, you know,
Yeah, my doubt was whether if new, like through immigration and conquest, a grammaticalization occurred, or if it had any effect on that. I think that was my question.
so a lot of things that are like viewed as characteristic of dialects of American English, like fixing to, finna, you know, that actually has some analogs already in varieties of British English. So, you know, it's hard, but there are patterns that are where you have grammaticalization in American English that are more that are different from those in other varieties of English. Um, but uh, here's an example from English from a contact situation. So in Indian English, um, then I don't know if you've ever noticed people saying the same a lot.
Yes.
Do it the same. So the same, to me, seems to be grammaticalizing as a pronoun. And this is something that I think is influenced by so you know, somebody's, you know, I often see like Indian students saying, okay, I will do the same, meaning I'll do it. So the same is becoming a pronoun, and that seems to be influenced by the language contact situation in India. And so, you know, this is an example of grammaticalization that's happening all around us.
I see.
So, yeah, so although additional grammaticalization can happen during language contact, the process that we're talking about can just as easily happen in a non-contact situation.
Non-contact.
Yeah.
Just
Thank you.
kind of how languages evolve.
So just one last question. So would it be an example of grammaticalization, the greeting in German of servus? I think it comes from Latin, right? Where
Say
it
that?
was like servus humilimus something.
I don't understand the word.
Servus. Servus. Servus.
Servus.
And what would have been its literal meaning, and what is it?
I think it comes from Latin.
Uh-huh.
I saw it on Wikipedia. One second.
And what is its grammatical function?
So it's the reduction of a full phrase in Latin. Here it says that it's servus humilimus domine spectabilis, which means your most humble servant, my noble lord. But now it's only a greeting. So people like, what's up? They say servus.
Okay.
So that's not grammaticalization per se, but it is reduction.
Okay.
And it's
Right.
a kind of both, it's not a phonological reduction, but it's a kind of morphosyntactic reduction of some sort.
Yeah, so the question that, okay, so that's an important thing, is that not every instance of reduction is grammaticalization.
Got it. Thank you.
But let me consider another one from Spanish. For usted, that used to be your mercy, something like vos,
Su
vostra
merced.
or vuestra
Oh, vuestra
merced.
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 Vuestra merced.
Method, yeah.
Mhm. And it
Oh, I see.
reduced, and it was probably not a pronoun, and now it is. And it was probably a way of not using the word, speaking to a very important person. Sometimes you don't like to use the word you, it seems too familiar. So
Mhm.
you use a third person pronoun like your mercy.
Yes.
That could be grammaticalization,
Could
going
be.
from a third person noun phrase to a second person pronoun. I'm not really
I would consider that grammaticalization.
Mhm.
Um,
But yeah, but not every reduced thing is a grammaticalization. What you need to see is the change from a literal meaning to a function in grammar that doesn't necessarily include the original literal meaning. Includes it maybe still a little bit, but not a lot.
Okay, this makes everything clear. Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, another example of grammaticalization. This is my favorite one. Words that mean something small become grammaticalized as negatives. So before grammaticalization, a language will say, people will just start saying something like, I didn't drink a drop, I didn't go a step. And there's this little thing, the drop and the step. Now, after grammaticalization, you end up with a situation like in French. Je n'ai pas mangé de gâteau. I didn't eat any cake. Now, I'm giving you a preview here of what we're going to talk about next, which is called an interlinear gloss. You'll see in the middle line of the example, I said what each piece of the French sentence is. So I, negation, have, negation, eat, of cake. And then the fluent translation into English is I didn't eat any cake. And we're going to talk about this format for presenting examples in much more detail in a few minutes. So when people say a negative sentence in French, they're not thinking about steps. Although pas originally meant step, but they're not thinking about steps. Pas just has become part of the negative. And so what we say is that when pas became grammaticalized as a construction element, an element of the French negative construction, French developed a morphosyntactic strategy for negation. And the strategy is a double negation element surrounding the verb. Whereas English just uses not before an auxiliary verb, French has a double strategy with two pieces of the negative surrounding the verb on either side. And what's even more interesting is that when people are speaking French, although I think not writing, they can leave out the ne, the first part of the negation, and they can use pas, which originally meant step, as the only marker of negation. So they might say, j'ai pas mangé de gâteau. Really sorry about my pronunciation. Um,
should make Kaio read it.
yeah, actually, Kaio, could you pronounce it properly?
Which one?
The French sentence on the screen.
Je n'ai pas mangé de gâteau.
Okay, and what if you were speaking quickly and you left out the N?
J'ai pas mangé de gâteau.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Thank you. That sounded much better than when I said it. Okay. So what's interesting is that Pa joined this morphosyntax of negation in French, and now the ne, the original negation, can be omitted. And in colloquial speech, this word that originally meant step is left as the only marker of negation. So I think that's really, really interesting. And according to Paul Hopper, one of the people of the highly cited book, one of the authors, There were other things like little fish bones, like I didn't eat even a little fish bone. And at one time, and I just think this is the cutest example of grammaticalization. If you're interested in grammaticalization, this is not required, but fun. I found a website where I was able to download the PDF of the first edition of the World Lexicon of Grammaticalization. The second edition is available as a paper book. I highly recommend flipping through this book. It's fascinating. And it's really done as a lexicon. Like, it's got categories like go becomes future, one becomes indefinite article, small thing becomes negative. And it's got indexes and everything. It's really a fun book to look at. Another fun but not required thing is that the Brazilian Linguistic Society made a YouTube channel with talks by famous linguists. It's called Aberline. Oh, does anyone speak Portuguese? Aberline ao Vivo. Like Aberline, that's the Brazilian Linguistic Society, Aberline Live. But a lot of them are in English. So this one's in English, and Elizabeth Traugott traces the meaning of by the way from its literal meaning of near the path, like by meaning near and the way being a path. And so by the way meant like I left it near the path, and maybe you were passing by and you left something near the path, by the way, on the side. And then she traces it historically, giving dates and examples of its different meanings on the path to grammaticalization, and ending up with a kind of newish way of using by the way to introduce a nasty punchline, like by the way, like a reveal, a nasty reveal. By the way, I'm breaking up with you. And she also discusses things like the origin of the word but, meaning by out, like near out or on the outside. And now it's grammaticalized with many meanings as a discourse marker indicating contrast. So that's also not required, but fun. Okay. So remember that what we're doing now is picking apart this definition that I gave of morphosyntax. And it's unusual, I think, in a linguistics class to teach morphosyntax. Usually Intro to Linguistics has morphology and syntax as separate components, separate units of the class. However, we are combining that into morphosyntax. Although we did talk about morphology separately, and we will talk about syntax separately, but the reason we're talking about morphosyntax as one piece is that the same meanings can be grammaticalized in different ways in different languages. So some languages might grammaticalize the meaning of future as a word or as a morpheme or as a grammatical structure. So that's why we're talking about morphology and syntax together. The same meanings can be grammaticalized in different languages as morphology and syntax. Okay, so to look back at the definition again, morphosyntax is about meanings and morphology and syntax, and meanings that have been grammaticalized in the form of morphology and syntax. So it's meaning and form, it's about constructions, that have maybe lost their original lexical meaning if they ever had one, and most things did deep in thousands of years of history and have become part of the grammar. Okay, so any question about this definition before I move on to the next thing, which is interlinear glosses? So to summarize, we just picked apart. I just presented this definition and we just picked it apart. What are constructions? What is grammaticalization? And this is the definition of morphosyntax. Should I go on? Okay.
There don't seem to be any questions. So.
Okay, I'm going to go on. Okay, so this is obligatory. You have to read this document, the Leipzig glossing rules. And now we'll go over part of what's in that document. Raise your hand if in some other class you have used interlinear glossed text. And it's a way that linguists communicate data to each other. Arthur's hand is up. And Janny. Okay, so this is a way that linguists communicate. If somebody writes an article about, this is Indonesian on this slide now. If somebody writes an article about Indonesian and I'm a linguist reading their article and I don't speak Indonesian, I use this interlinear gloss text as a way that I can understand how the author of the article is talking about Indonesian. And I can understand what they're saying about Indonesian, even though I don't speak Indonesian. And so one of the learning goals for this class is that you learn to use interlinear gloss text. You learn to understand it and learn to produce it. So this is a very simple example of interlinear gloss text. It consists of 3 lines. The first line is the object language, the language we're talking about, which is Indonesian. The third line is the meta language. We're describing Indonesian in English. So English is the meta language. And the second line is called interlinear because it's between the first line and the third line. So it's between lines. And it's called a gloss. And the gloss is in the meta language, English. You're going to do an assignment with interlinear gloss text. And there's something I have to tell you that's very important at the bottom of the screen and the light blue, the thin light blue lines. When you do your assignment with interlinear gloss text, you must tab the object language with the gloss. We will not be able to read it. We'll hand it back to you if you don't tab the object language with the gloss. So the first word in Indonesian is tabbed to line up with the first word of the gloss. The second word in Indonesian is tabbed to line up with the second word of the gloss. The third word in Indonesian is tabbed to line up with the third word of the gloss, and so on. So linguists read interlinear gloss texts like computer scientists and mathematicians and other scientists read mathematical formulas. So it's not random. It's something that we're used to reading, and we won't be able to read yours if you don't tab it. So we really need you to put those tabs in. And there are many macros in LaTeX for glossing. You can also use a table format in Word and put the words in different columns. So there's many ways that you can do it. So let's look at the gloss, the middle line. The gloss contains information about the morphosyntax of the object language, which in this case is Indonesian. So and then this is really important part. The third line does not contain information about Indonesian. The third line just tells you how do you say this in the meta language, which is English. So I have a wrong conclusion there, like, and then on the next slide, I have a correct observation. So let's look at the correct one first, actually. So when you compare line 2 and line 3, because you don't know Indonesian, but you know English. So you can compare line 2 and line 3, because those are both in the meta language. What can you conclude? So the line 3, the fluent way of saying it in English, says they are in Jakarta now. And the gloss says they in Jakarta now. So what you can conclude is that when you're talking about people being located somewhere, English uses a copula strategy. A copula is a linking verb or a be verb. English uses a copula strategy between they and the location in Jakarta. And Indonesian uses a zero copula strategy, just they in Jakarta. So a copula strategy and a zero copula strategy. Let's look at the incorrect way to interpret this. The incorrect way would be to compare Indonesian to English and say that the word that's spelled D-I-D, let's just presumably pronounced D, means are in. That would be a wrong conclusion. D doesn't mean are, it means in. So it's not correct to impose English grammar on Indonesian. The correct thing to do is to use the gloss to see how the grammar of English and Indonesian are different. And the conclusion that you would draw is English uses a copula strategy and Indonesian does not. So questions about that? We're going to give you a more complicated example. Go on and things will get a little more complicated, but any more questions? Okay, so let's go over this and then I'll ask for questions. So we're going to look at the English construction, meaning someone is located somewhere, and the Indonesian construction, meaning someone is located somewhere. So the meaning in both cases is someone is located somewhere. The form in English is a pronoun, they, a copula, are, and a prepositional phrase in Jakarta. And then forget about the word now for now. The Indonesian construction also means someone is located somewhere. And its form is just a pronoun and a prepositional phrase, no copula. And then I've named the strategy. English uses the copula strategy and Indonesian uses a zero copula strategy. So we're going to call these strategies, we're going to call them morphosyntactic strategies, but we're also going to use them as a way of talking about language typology, how languages are different from each other. And when we're talking, and we'll find that languages differ in, sometimes not so many different ways. So when we talk about a new language we're learning or studying or something, we can say, this language has a zero copula strategy, and that language has a copula strategy. So it's a way of talking about how languages are different without imposing the grammar of one language on another language. The thing we don't want to do is impose the grammar of the meta language onto the object language. We just want to talk about how they use different strategies to express the same meaning. Okay, any questions about that? No chats, no hands. Oh, wait, David, I can't hear you. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, Arthur says, no, that makes sense, though I've done glossing before, so.
Yeah, so I can say that at some point, people will make this mistake where they'll impose English grammar on another language, and we'll just say, and then just remember this slide, and I'll say, you're doing that thing we told you not to do. And then we'll do it the right way. Okay, so I'll just do one more thing before we stop. This is a more detailed gloss of the same Indonesian sentence. So instead of glossing the first word as they and the second word as in, I've glossed the first word as 3.pl and the second word as LOC. So 3.pl means third person plural. And this is why you have to look at the link a few slides ago on the Leipzig glossing conventions, because it tells you what these abbreviations mean. It tells you that 3 means third person, PL means plural, and LOC means locative. Um, so instead of saying that the Indonesian word, I don't know how to pronounce it, but let's say mereka means they, we'll say mereka is third person plural. And instead of saying that D means in, we'll say D is a locative marker. And the other thing that you'll need to get out of the Leipzig glossing rules is the use of dots and dashes. So we'll just go over the use of the dot now. The dot means that 3 and plural are in one morpheme. So there's one morpheme with 2 meanings. And what kind of exponents is this?
What kind is it?
Yeah, what kind of exponents? I think we should make the students answer.
Yeah.
2 meanings and 1 morpheme.
We can't go on until you resolve this.
What is it called when there's 2 meanings and 1 morpheme? Or what kind of, well, no, I don't want to say this is a fusional language because it's not.
No. It's mostly an isolating language, although it has a little bit of agglutination.
But this is an example.
So Abby says cumulative.
Okay, cumulative. Is that right?
That is correct.
That is correct. Cumulative exponents. Okay, so we're going to start next time with a more complicated comparison of English and Russian. And okay, work on your midterm. Okay, any other questions? Nope.
Thank you. No other questions coming up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, Ankit has a question about the midterm.
Okay.
Yeah, I just looked at the midterm. I didn't get a chance to look at it before the class. So I have a question in regards to basically the fourth part in the first question for the spectrogram D. It asks that so the question number C in that is basically that what can you look like what clue does a spectrogram provide? So like what kind of like I mean what is it that we are trying to expect here? Like what kind of clue does the spectrogram provide? So in identifying that particular segment, are we looking for the clues? I mean,
so we're looking for the evidence in the spectrogram for identifying that segment that way. You know, in practice,
okay.
probably you're going to solve these somewhat bottom up and somewhat top down. It's sort of like the constructional gestalts that we talked about
Right.
last lecture. So you're probably going to look at the spectrograms and figure out which name goes with which.
Uh-huh.
And then you're going to go and figure out what sound in those names goes with which slot. And then you're going to reason backwards from the spectrogram to the from the IPA symbols backward to the spectrogram and say what about this region of the spectrogram leads me to believe that that is the right symbol
Okay.
for that place. So this could be, like the formants are a particular way relative to one another, or there's a lot of aperiodic noise, or I forgot which one you were exactly talking about, or
Okay.
using perturbation theory, we can predict that this consonant or vowel should have this place of articulation, or you can see regular glottal pulses in the spectrogram and the waveform, so we know that it must be voiced, or it could be anything like that.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Yeah. That makes that question clearer. Okay. Thank you. Um, and I kind of have like, because I've not done the lexi formalism properly.
Uh-huh.
Would it be possible to review some other example sometime, if if there is an officer or something like that?
Um,
Or,
I can produce a lexi example
okay.
for you to, um, just by way of comparison, a simpler one.
Uh-huh.
Um, and because we didn't get a chance to do an exercise on that yet. Um,
Yeah, that would really help, because I mean, at this moment, based on what I know, I'm sort of clueless on how to go about that part,
right,
that particular question. Uh, like, apart from that, the others, at least I know what to do. Uh,
right.
I mean, whether I get the right answer or not is a different thing, but at least I know what to do, what steps to take. For this
So,
one, I'm a bit uh, unclear on.
so what you're going to want to do first is to go back to the lecture
Okay.
about lexi,
Hmm.
where we go over the examples from, I think there's an example from Inuit and an example from some other language. Um, and it shows basically how the formalism works,
Uh-huh.
um, and how it relates to finite state transducers. And then I'll come up with another small example, a worked example.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh,
That, I mean, yeah. Another example might help to solve that particular midterm question.
mhm.
Uh, because I have read the textbook on
Uh-huh.
on this particular part, but I still, I mean, I still have some, like, doubts on, like, how to go about this task. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I still have.
So
I
I
mean,
can I can give you a hint
mhm.
about how to start the task out. And this, is separate from how the lexi formalism works specifically,
Uh-huh.
but just go and look at the words and the properties, the features,
Right.
and try to divide up the words into kind of repeating pieces, repeating morphemes
Uh-huh.
that might have some of the meanings, that might match up in some way with the meanings of the properties. So um, try to figure out first what the root of each word is,
Mhm.
and then see if you can figure out, is there a morpheme that means plural, for example? Is there a
Okay.
morpheme that means instrumental? And um, try to chop up each word in that way.
Mhm.
And then you'll start to see the pattern for how it works. And once you understand how it works and what each part of the word does, then you can go about writing an FST using Lexi that will generate the words or parse them, depending on whether you invert it or not.
Okay, right. And like, so from what I understand is that like one can actually code this up and try to see uh, in the like through the command line on whether the output seems correct.
Yes,
Is
yes,
that
that's fine.
allowed to be
Yeah.
done?
Oh, yeah, that's fine. That's
Okay.
encouraged.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would rather you test it and you get it right.
Mhm.
It's much
Okay.
easier to grade. So.
Yeah, yeah, I was thinking about doing it that way, but I just wanted to like make sure that that is allowed.
Yeah, that's allowed.
Okay. Yeah, then I mean then in that case I would also try to do the phonology also in the same way, just to ensure that I get the right like the transformation.
Uh-huh.
Correct. I mean the way we did the assignment essentially solved that question in the same manner.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean I'm a bit more comfortable doing it that way. Yeah. Okay. uh I think I think those are the questions that I have at this point in time. If I have something else, I can send a private post, right?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you.
no problem.
Yeah, this is helpful.
Thank you
D-
very much.
You're welcome.
See you
So
on Wednesday, I guess.
see you Wednesday.
Okay, so David, I'm gonna,
Do you want to stop recording?
yeah. Wait, I'm still recording.